Welcome to tonight's bedtime story. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the gentle rain guide you to sleep. Tonight, we journey into the magical world of Aladdin and the enchanted lamp. Relax and let the story begin. Us, And when she felt that her end drew nigh, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Always be a good girl, and I will look down from heaven and watch over you." Soon afterwards she shut her eyes and died, and was buried in the garden, and the little girl went every day to her grave and wept, and was always good and kind to all about her. And the snow fell and spread a beautiful white covering over the grave. But by the time the spring came, and the sun had melted it away again, her father had married another wife. This new wife had 2 daughters of her own that she brought home with her. They were fair in face but foul at heart, and it was now a sorry time for the poor little girl. What does the good-for-nothing want in the parlor? Said they. They who would eat bread should first earn it. Away with the kitchen maid. Then they took away her fine clothes and gave her an old gray frock to put on, and laughed at her and turned her into the kitchen. There she was forced to do hard work, to rise early before daylight. Besides that, the sisters plagued her in all sorts of ways, and laughed at her. In the evening when she was tired, she had no bed to lie down on, but was made to lie by the hearth among the ashes, and as this, of course, made her always dusty and dirty, they called her Ashput-Tel. It happened once that the father was going to the fair, and asked his wife's daughters what he should bring them. "Fine clothes," said the first. "Pearls." "And diamonds," cried the second. "Now, child," said he to his own daughter, "what will you have?" "The first twig, dear father, that brushes against your hat when you turn your face to come homewards," said she. Then he botched for the first to the fine clothes and pearls and diamonds they had asked for, And on his way home, as he rode through a green copse, a hazel twig brushed against him and almost pushed off his hat. So he broke it off and brought it away. And when he got home, he gave it to his daughter. Then she took it and went to her mother's grave and planted it there, and cried so much that it was watered with her tears. And there it grew and became a fine tree. 3 times every day she went to it and cried. And soon a little bird came and built its nest upon the tree, and talked with her, and watched over her, and brought her whatever she wished for. Now it happened that the king of that land held a feast, which was to last 3 days, and out of those who came to it, his son was to choose a bride for himself. Ashputel's 2 sisters were asked to come, so they called her up and said, "Now, comb our hair, brush our shoes, and tie our sashes for us, for we are going to dance at the king's feast." Then she did as she was told, but when all was done she could not help crying, for she thought to herself she should so have liked to have gone with them to the ball. And at last she begged her mother very hard to let her go. "You, Ashputel," said she, "you who have nothing to wear, no clothes at all, and who cannot even dance, you want to go to the ball." And when she kept on begging, she said at last, to get rid of her, "I will throw this dish full of peas into the ash heap, and if in 2 hours' time you have picked them all out, you shall go to the feast too." Among the ashes, but the little maiden ran out at the back door into the garden and cried out, "Hither, hither!" Through the sky, turtle doves and linnets, fly, blackbird, thrush and chaffinch gay, hither, hither, haste away. One and all, come help me, quick, haste, haste, pick, pick, pick. Then first came 2 white doves, flying in at the kitchen window. Next came to and after them came all the little birds under heaven, chirping and fluttering in, and they flew down into the ashes, and the little doves stooped their heads down and set to work. Pick, pick, pick. And then the others began to pick, and among them all they soon picked out all the good grain and put it into a dish, but left the ashes. Long before the end of the hour the work was quite done, and all flew out again at the windows. Then Ashputo brought the dish to her mother, overjoyed at the thought that now she should go to the ball. But the mother said, "No, no, you slut, you have no clothes and cannot dance. you shall not go." And when Ashputtel begged very hard to go, she said, "If you can, in 1 hour's time, pick 2 of those dishes of peas out of the ashes, you shall go too." And thus she thought she should at least get rid of her. So she shook 2 dishes of peas into the ashes. But the little maiden went out into the garden at the back of the house, and cried out as before, "Hither, hither, through the sky, turtle doves and linnets, fly, blackbird, thrush, and chuffing, gay, hither, hither, haste away. One and all come help me, quick, hasty, hasty, pick, pick, pick." Then first came 2 white doves in at the kitchen window. Next came 2 turtle doves. And after them came all the little birds under heaven, chirping and hopping about. And they flew down into the ashes. And the little doves put their heads down and set to work. Pick, pick. And then the others began pick, pick. And they put all the good grain into the dishes and left all the ashes. Before half an hour's time all was done, and out they flew again. And then Ashput took the dishes to her mother, rejoicing to think that she should now go to the ball. But her mother said, "It is all of no use. You cannot go. You have no clothes, and cannot dance, and you would only put us to shame." And off she went, with her 2 daughters to the ball. Now, when all were gone, and nobody left at home, Ashputtel went sorrowfully and sat down under the hazel tree and cried out, "Shake, shake, hazel tree, gold and silver over me." Then her friend the bird flew out of the tree and brought a gold and silver dress for her, and slippers of spangled silk, and she put them on, and followed her sisters to the feast. But they did not know her, and thought it must be some strange princess. She looked so fine and beautiful in her rich clothes, and they never once thought of Ashputtel, taking it for granted that she was safe at home in the dirt. The king's son soon came up to her, and took her by the hand and danced with her and no one else, and he never left her hand. But when anyone else came to ask her to dance, he said, "This lady is dancing with me." Thus they danced till a late hour of the night, and then she wanted to go home. And the king's son said, "I shall go and take care of you to your home." For he wanted to see where the beautiful maiden lived. But she slipped away from him unawares and ran off towards home. And as the prince followed her, she jumped up into the pigeon house and shut the door. Then he waited till her father came home and told him that the unknown maiden, who had been at the feast, had hid herself in the pigeon house. But when they had broken open the door, they found no one within, and as they came back into the house, Ashputtel was lying, as she always did, in her dirty frock by the ashes, and her dim little lamp was burning in the chimney, for she had run as quickly as she could through the pigeon house and on to the hazel tree, and had there taken off her beautiful clothes and put them beneath the tree, that the bird might carry them away, and had lain down again amid the ashes. in her little gray frock. The next day, when the feast was again held, and her father, mother, and sisters were gone, Ashputtel went to the hazel tree and said, "Shake, shake, hazel tree, gold and silver over me." And the bird came and brought a still finer dress than the one she had worn the day before. And when she came in it to the ball, everyone wondered at her beauty. But the king's son, who was waiting for her, took her by the hand and danced with her. And when anyone asked her to dance, he said as before, "This lady is dancing with me." When night came, she wanted to go home, and the king's son followed here as before, that he might see into what house she went. But she sprang away from him all at once into the garden behind her father's house. In this garden stood a fine large pear tree full of ripe fruit, and Ashputtel, not knowing where to hide herself, jumped up into it without being seen. Then the king's son lost sight of her, and could not find out where she was gone, but waited till her father came home, and said to him, "The unknown lady who danced with me has slipped away, and I think she must have sprung into the pear tree." The father thought to himself, "Can it be Ashputtel?" So he had an axe brought, and they cut down the tree, but found no one upon it. And when they came back into the kitchen, there lay Ashputtel among the ashes, for she had slipped down on the other side of the tree and carried her beautiful clothes back to the bird at the hazel tree, and then put on her little gray frock. The third day, when her father and mother and sisters were gone, she went again into the garden and said, "Shake, shake, hazel tree, gold and silver over me." Then her kind friend the bird brought a dress still finer than the former one, and slippers which were all of gold, so that when she came to the feast, no one knew what to say for wonder at her beauty. And the king's son danced with nobody but her, and when anyone else asked her to dance, he said, "This lady is my partner, sir." When night came, she wanted to go home, and the king's son would go with her, and said to himself, "I will not lose her this time." But, however, she again slipped away from him, though in such a hurry that she dropped her left golden slipper upon the stairs. The prince took the shoe, and went the next day to the king his father, and said, "I will take for my wife the lady that this golden slipper fits." Then both the sisters were overjoyed to hear it, for they had beautiful feet, and had no doubt that they could wear the golden slipper. The eldest went first into the room where the slipper was, and wanted to try it on, and the mother stood by, but her great toe could not go into it, and the shoe was altogether much too small for her. Then the mother gave her a knife and said, "Never mind, cut it off. When you are queen, you will not care about toes. You will not want to walk." So the silly girl cut off her great toe, and thus squeezed on the shoe, and went to the king's son. Then he took her for his bride, and set her beside him on his horse, and rode away with her homewards. But on their way home, they had to pass by the hazel tree that Ashputtel had planted, and on the branch sat a little dove singing, Back again! Back again! Look to the shoe. The shoe is too small and not made for you. Prince, Prince, look again. Look again for thy bride, for she's not the true one that sits by thy side. Then the prince got down and looked at her foot, and he saw by the blood that streamed from it what a trick she had played him. So he turned his horse round and brought the false bride back to her home and said, "This is not the right bride. Let the other sister try and put on this slipper." Then she went into the room and got her foot into the shoe, all but the heel, which was too large. But her mother squeezed it in till the blood came and took her to the king's son. And he set her as his bride by his side on his horse and rode away with her. But when they came to the hazel tree, the little dove sat there still and sang back again. The shoe is too small and not made for you, Prince. Prince, look again for thy bride, for she's not the true one that sits by thy side. Then he looked down and saw that the blood streamed so much from the shoe that her white stockings were quite red. So he turned his horse and brought her also. Back again. "This is not the true bride," said he to the father. "Have you no other daughters?" "No," said he. "There is only a little dirty Ashbutel here, the child of my first wife. I am sure she cannot be the bride." The prince told him to send her, but the mother said, "No, no, she is much too dirty. She will not dare to show herself." However, the prince would have her come, and she first washed her face and hands, and then went in and curtsied to him, and he reached her the golden slipper. Then she took a clumsy shoe off her left foot and put on the golden slipper, and it fitted her as if it had been made for her. And when he drew near and looked at her face, he knew her, and said, "This is the right bride." But the mother and both the sisters were frightened and turned pale with anger as he took Ashbuto on his horse and rode away with her. And when they came to the hazel tree, the white dove sang, "Home, home, look at the shoe. Princess, the shoe was made for you. Prince, Prince, take home thy bride, for she is the true one that sits by thy side." And when the dove had done its song, it came flying and perched upon her right shoulder, and so went home with her. "The white snake, yeah?" Long time ago there lived a king who was famed for his wisdom through all the land. Nothing was hidden from him, and it seemed as if news of the most secret things was brought to him through the air. But he had a strange custom. Every day after dinner, when the table was cleared and no one else was present, a trusty servant had to bring him one more dish. It was covered, however, and even the servant did not know what was in it. Neither did anyone know, for the king never took off the cover to eat of it until he was quite alone. This had gone on for a long time, when one day the servant, who away the dish, was overcome with such curiosity that he could not help carrying the dish into his room. When he had carefully locked the door, he lifted up the cover and saw a white snake lying on the dish. But when he saw it, he could not deny himself the pleasure of tasting it. So he cut of a little bit and put it into his mouth. No sooner had it touched his tongue than he heard a strange whispering of little voices outside his window. He went and listened, and then noticed that it was the sparrows who were chattering together and telling one another of all kinds of things which they had seen in the fields and woods. Even the snake had given him power of understanding the language of animals. Now it so happened that on this very day the queen lost her most beautiful ring, and suspicion of having stolen it fell upon this trusty servant, who was allowed to go everywhere. The king ordered the man to be brought before him, and threatened with angry words that unless he could before the morrow point out the thief, he himself should be looked upon as guilty and executed. In vain he declared his innocence. He was dismissed with no better answer. In his trouble and fear he went down into the courtyard, and took thought how to help himself out of his trouble. Now some ducks were sitting together quietly by a brook, and taking their rest, and whilst they were making their feathers smooth with their bills, they were having a confidential conversation together. The servant stood by and listened. They were telling one another of all the places where they had been waddling about all the morning, and what good food they had found. And one said in a pitiful tone, "Something lies heavy on my stomach, as I was eating in haste, I swallowed a ring which lay under the queen's window." The servant at once seized her by the neck, carried her to the kitchen, and said to the cook, "Here is a fine duck. Pray, kill her." "Yes," said the cook, and weighed her in his hand. "She has spared no trouble to fatten herself, and has been waiting to be roasted as long enough." So he cut off her head, and as she was being dressed for the spit, the queen's ring was found inside her. The servant could now easily prove his innocence, and the king, to make amends for the wrong, allowed him to ask a favor, and promised him the best place in the court that he could wish for. The servant refused everything, and only asked for a horse and some money for traveling, as he had a mind to see the world and go about a little. When his request was granted, he set out on his way, and one day came to a pond, where he saw 3 fishes caught in the reeds and gasping for water. Now, though it is said that fishes are dumb, he heard them lamenting that they must perish so miserably. And, as he had a kind heart, he got off his horse and put the 3 prisoners back into the water. They leapt with delight put out their heads and cried to him, "We will remember you and repay you for saving us." He rode on, and after a while it seemed to him that he heard a voice in the sand at his feet. He listened, and heard an ant king complain, "Why cannot folks, with their clumsy beasts, keep off our bodies? That stupid horse, with his heavy hoofs, has been treading down my people without mercy." So he turned on to a side path, and the Ant King cried out to him, "We will remember you one. Good turn deserves another." The path led him into a wood, and there he saw 2 old ravens standing by their nest and throwing out their young ones. "Out with you, you idle good for nothing creature," cried they. "We cannot find food for you any longer. You are big enough and can provide for yourselves." But the poor young ravens lay upon the ground, flapping their wings and crying, "Oh, what helpless chicks we are! We must shift for ourselves, and yet we cannot fly. What can we do but lie here and starve?" So the good young fellow alighted and killed his horse with his sword, and gave it to them for food. Then they came hopping up to it, satisfied their hunger, and cried, "We will remember you one. Good turn deserves another." And now he had to use his own legs, and when he had walked a long way, he came to a large city. There was a great noise and crowd in the streets, and a man rode up on horseback, crying aloud, "The king's daughter wants a husband, but whoever seeks her hand must perform a hard task, and if he does not succeed, he will forfeit his life." Many had already made the attempt, but in vain. Nevertheless, when the youth saw the king's daughter, he was so overcome by her great beauty that he forgot all danger, went before the king, and declared himself a suitor. So he was led out to the sea, and a gold ring was thrown into it before his eyes. Then the king ordered him to fetch this ring up from the bottom of the sea, and added, "If you come up again without it, you will be thrown in again and again until you perish amid the waves." All the people grieved for the handsome youth. Then they went away, leaving him alone by the sea. He stood on the shore and considered what he should do, when suddenly he saw 3 fishes come swimming towards him, and they were the very fishes whose lives he had saved. The one in the middle held a mussel in its mouth, which it laid on the shore at the youth's feet, and when he had taken it up and opened it, there lay the gold ring in the shell. Full of joy, he took it to the king and expected that he would grant him the promised reward. But when the proud princess perceived that he was not her equal in birth, she scorned him and required him first to perform another task. She went down into the garden and strewed with her own hands 10 sacks full of millet seed on the grass. Then she said, "Tomorrow morning before sunrise these must be picked up, and not a single grain be wanting." The youth sat down in the garden and considered how it might be possible to perform this task, but he could think of nothing. And there he sat sorrowfully awaiting the break of day, when he should be led to death. But as soon as the first rays of the sun shone into the garden, he saw all the 10 sacks standing side by side, quite full, and not a single grain was missing. The ant king had come in the night with thousands and thousands of ants, and the grateful creatures had by great industry picked up all the millet seed and gathered them into the sacks. Presently the king's daughter herself came down into the garden and was amazed to see that the young man had done the task she had given him. But she could not yet conquer her proud heart, and said, "Although he has performed both the tasks, he shall not be my husband until he had brought me an apple from the tree of life." The youth did not know where the tree of life stood, but he set out, and would have gone on forever, as long as his legs would carry him, though he had no hope of finding it. After he had wandered through 3 kingdoms, he came one evening to a wood, and lay down under a tree to sleep. But he heard a rustling in the branches, and a golden apple fell into his hand. At the same time 3 ravens flew down to him, perched themselves upon his knee, and said, "We are the 3 young ravens whom you saved from starving when we had grown big and heard that you were seeking the golden apple. We flew over the sea to the end of the world, where the tree of life stands, and have brought you the apple." The youth, full of joy, set out homewards, and took the golden apple to the king's beautiful daughter, who had now no more excuses left to make. They cut the apple of life in 2 and ate it together, and then her heart became full of love for him, and they lived in undisturbed happiness to a great. The wolf and the 7 little Katies. There was once upon a time an old goat who had 7 little kids, and loved them with all the love of a mother for her children. One day she wanted to go into the forest and fetch some food, so she called all 7 to her and said, "Dear children, I have to go into the forest. Be on your guard against the wolf. If he comes in, he will devour you all, skin, hair, and everything. The wretch often disguises himself, but you will know him at once by his rough voice and his black feet." The kids said, "Dear mother, we will take good care of ourselves. You may go away without any anxiety." Then the old one bleated, and went on her way with an easy mind. It was not long before someone knocked at the house door and called, "Open the door, dear children. Your mother is here, and has brought something back with her for each of you." But the little kids knew that it was the wolf by the rough voice. "We will not open the door," cried they. "You are not our mother. She has a soft, pleasant voice, but your voice is rough. You are the wolf." Then the wolf went away to a shopkeeper and bought himself a great lump of chalk, ate this and made his voice soft with it. Then he came back, knocked at the door of the house, and called, "Open the door. Dear children, your mother is here and has brought something back with her for each of you." But the wolf had laid his black paws against the window, and the children saw them and cried, "We will not open the door. Our mother has not black feet like you. You are the wolf." Then the wolf ran to a baker and said, I have hurt my feet. Rub some dough over them for me." And when the baker had rubbed his feet over, he ran to the miller and said, "Strew some white meal over my feet for me." The miller thought to himself, "The wolf wants to deceive someone," and refused. But the wolf said, "If you will not do it, I will devour you." Then the miller was afraid and made his paws white for him. Truly, this is the way of mankind. So now the wretch went for the third time to the house, knocked at it, and said, "Open the door for me. Children, your dear little mother has come home and has brought every one of you something back from the forest with her." The little kids cried, "First show us your paws that we may know if you are our dear little mother." Then he put his paws in through the window, and when the kids saw that they were white, they believed that all he said was true and opened the door. But who should come in but the wolf? They were terrified and wanted to hide themselves. One sprang under the table, the second into the bed, the third into the stove, the fourth into the kitchen, the fifth into the cupboard, the sixth under the washing bowl, and the seventh into the clock case. But the wolf found them all and used no great ceremony. One after the other he swallowed them down his throat. The youngest, who was in the clock case, was the only one he did not find. When the wolf had satisfied his appetite, he took himself off, laid himself down under a tree in the green meadow outside, and began to sleep. Soon afterwards the old goat came home again from the forest. Ah, what a sight she saw there! The house stood wide open. The table, chairs, and benches were thrown down. The washing bowl lay broken to pieces, and the quilts and pillows were pulled off the bed. She sought her children, but they were nowhere to be found. She called them one after another by name, but no one answered. At last, when she came to the youngest, a soft voice cried, "Dear mother, I am in the clock case." She took the kid out, and it told her that the wolf had come and had eaten all the others. Then you may imagine how she wept over her poor children. At length in her grief she went out, and the youngest kid ran with her. When they came to the meadow, there lay the wolf by the tree and snored so loud that the branches shook. She looked at him on every side and saw that something was moving and struggling in his gorged belly. "Ah, heavens," she said. "Is it possible that my poor children, whom he has swallowed down for his supper, can be still alive?" Then the kid had to run home and fetch scissors and a needle and thread. And the goat cut open the monster's stomach, and hardly had she made one cut than one little kid thrust its head out. And when she had cut farther, all 6 sprang out, one after another, and were all still alive, and had suffered no injury whatever, for in his greediness the monster had swallowed them down whole. What rejoicing there was! They embraced their dear mother and jumped like a tailor at his wedding. The mother, however, said, "Now go and look for some big stones, and we will fill the wicked beast's stomach with them while he is still asleep." Then the 7 kids dragged the stones thither with all speed, and put as many of them into the stomach as they could get in. And the mother sewed him up again in the greatest haste, so that he was not aware of anything and never once stirred. When the wolf at length had had his fill of sleep, he got on his legs, and as the stones in his stomach made him very thirsty, he wanted to go to a well to drink. But when he began to walk and to move about, the stones in his stomach knocked against each other and rattled. Then cried he, "What rumbles and tumbles against my poor bones? I thought 'two was 6 kids, but it feels like big stones." And when he got to the well and stooped over the water to drink, the heavy stones made him fall in, and he drowned miserably. When the 7 kids saw that, they came running to the spot and cried aloud, "The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead!" and danced for joy round about the well with their mother. The queen bee 2 king's sons once upon a time went into the world to seek their fortunes, but they soon fell into a wasteful, foolish way of living, so that they could not return home again. Then their brother, who was a little insignificant dwarf, went out to seek for his brothers, but when he had found them, they only laughed at him to think that he, who was so young and simple, should try to travel through the world, when they, who were so much wiser, had been unable to get on. However, they all set out on their journey together, and came at last to an ant-hill. The 2 elder brothers would have pulled it down, in order to see how the poor aunts in their fright would run about and carry off their eggs. But the little dwarf said, "Let the poor things enjoy themselves. I will not suffer you to trouble them." So on they went, and came to a lake where many, many ducks were swimming about. The 2 brothers wanted to catch 2 and roast them, but the dwarf said, "Let the poor things enjoy themselves. You shall not kill them." Next, they came to a bee's nest in a hollow tree, and there was so much honey that it ran down the trunk, and the 2 brothers wanted to light a fire under the tree and kill the bees, so as to get their honey, but the dwarf held them back and said, "Let the pretty insects enjoy themselves. I cannot let you burn them." At length the 3 brothers came to a castle, and as they passed by the stables they saw fine horses standing there, but all was of marble, and no man was to be seen. Then they went through all the rooms, till they came to a door on which were 3 locks. But in the middle of the door was a wicket, so that they could look into the next room. There they saw a little gray old man sitting at a table, and they called to him once or twice, but he did not hear. However, they called a 3rd time, and then he rose and came out to them. He said nothing, but took hold of them and led them to a beautiful table covered with all sorts of good things. And when they had eaten and drunk, he showed each of them to a bedchamber. The next morning he came to the eldest and took him to a marble table, where there were 3 tablets containing an account of the means by which the castle might be disenchanted. The first tablet said, "In the wood, under the moss, lie the 1,000 pearls belonging to the king's daughter. They must all be found, and if one be missing by set of sun, He who seeks them will be turned into marble. The eldest brother set out and sought for the pearls the whole day. But the evening came, and he had not found the first 100. So he was turned into stone as the tablet had foretold. The next day, the second brother undertook the task, but he succeeded no better than the first, for he could only find the second 100 of the pearls, and therefore he too was turned into stone. That at last came the little dwarf's turn, and he looked in the moss. But it was so hard to find the pearls, and the job was so tiresome. So he sat down upon a stone and cried. And as he sat there, the king of the ants whose life he had saved came to help him with 5,000 ants. And it was not long before they had found all the pearls and laid them in a heap. The second tablet said, "The key of the princess's bedchamber must be fished up out of the lake." And as the dwarf came to the brink of it, he saw the 2 ducks, whose lives he had saved, swimming about, and they dived down and soon brought in the key from the bottom. The third task was the hardest. It was to choose out the youngest and the best of the king's 3 daughters. Now they were all beautiful, and all exactly alike. But he was told that the eldest had eaten a piece of sugar, the next some sweet syrup, and the youngest a spoonful of honey. So he was to guess which it was that had eaten the honey. Then came the queen of the bees, who had been saved by the little dwarf from the fire, and she tried the lips of all 3. But at last she sat upon the lips of the one that had eaten the honey, and so the dwarf knew which was the youngest. Thus the spell was broken, and all who had been turned into stones awoke and took their proper forms. And the dwarf married the youngest and the best of the princesses, and was king after her father's death. But his 2 brothers married the other 2 sisters, the elves and the Eshuamaka. There was once a shoemaker who worked very hard and was very honest, but still he could not earn enough to live upon, and at last all he had in the world was gone, save just leather enough to make 1 pair of shoes. Then he cut his leather out, all ready to make up the next day, meaning to rise early in the morning to his work. His conscience was clear, and his heart light amidst all his troubles. So he went peaceably to bed, left all his cares to heaven, and soon fell asleep. In the morning, after he had said his prayers, he sat himself down to his work, when, to his great wonder, there stood the shoes all ready made upon the table. The good man knew not what to say or think at such an odd thing happening. He looked at the workmanship. There was not 1 false stitch in the whole job. All was so neat and true that it was quite a masterpiece. The same day a customer came in, and the shoes suited him so well that he willingly paid a price higher than usual for them. And the poor shoemaker, with the money, bought leather enough to make 2 pairs more. In the evening he cut out the work and went to bed early, that he might get up and begin betimes next day. But he was saved all the trouble, for when he got up in the morning the work was done ready to his hand. Soon in came buyers, who paid him handsomely for his goods, so that he bought leather enough for 4 pair more. He cut out the work again overnight and found it done in the morning, as before. And so it went on for some time. What was got ready in the evening was always done by daybreak, and the good man soon became thriving and well off again. One evening, about Christmas time, as he and his wife were sitting over the fire chatting together, he said to her, "I should like to sit up and watch tonight, that we may see who it is that comes and does my work for me." The wife liked the thought, so they left a light burning and hid themselves in a corner of the room, behind a curtain that was hung up there, and watched what would happen. As soon as it was midnight, there came in 2 little naked dwarfs, and they sat themselves upon the shoemaker's bench, took up all the work that was cut out, and began to ply with their little fingers, stitching and rapping and tapping away at such a rate that the shoemaker was all wonder and could not take his eyes off them, and on they went till the job was quite done, and the shoes stood ready for use upon the table. This was long before daybreak, and then they bustled away as quick as lightning dot. The next day the wife said to the shoemaker, "These little wights have made us rich, and we ought to be thankful to them, and do them a good turn if we can. I am quite sorry to see them run about as they do, and indeed it is not very decent, for they have nothing upon their backs to keep off the cold. I'll tell you what, I will make each of them a shirt, and a coat, and waistcoat, and a pair of pantaloons into the bargain. And do you make each of them a little pair of shoes?" The thought pleased the good cobbler very much, and one evening, when all the things were ready, they laid them on the table, instead of the work that they used to cut out, and then went and hid themselves, to watch what the little elves would do. Thought about midnight, in they came, dancing and skipping, hopped round the room, and then went to sit down to their work as usual. But when they saw the clothes lying for them, they laughed and chuckled, and seemed mightily delighted. Then they dressed themselves in the twinkling of an eye, and danced and capered and sprang about, as merry as could be, till at last they danced out at the door, and away over the green, the juniper chalan long ago, some 2,000 years or so. There lived a rich man with a good and beautiful wife. They loved each other dearly, but sorrowed much that they had no children. So greatly did they desire to have one, that the wife prayed for it day and night, but still they remained childless. In front of the house there was a court in which grew a juniper tree. One winter's day the wife stood under the tree to peel some apples, and as she was peeling them, she cut her finger, and the blood fell on the snow. "Ah," sighed the woman heavily, "if I had but a child, as red as blood and as white as snow." And as she spoke the words, her heart grew light within her, and it seemed to her that her wish was granted, and she returned to the house feeling glad and comforted. A month passed, and the snow had all disappeared. Then another month went by, and all the earth was green. So the months followed one another, and first the trees budded in the woods, and soon the green branches grew thickly, intertwined. And then the blossoms began to fall. Once again, the wife stood under the juniper tree, and it was so full of sweet scent that her heart leaped for joy, and she was so overcome with her happiness that she fell on her knees. Presently, the fruit became round and firm, and she was glad and at peace. But when they were fully ripe, she picked the berries and ate eagerly of them. And then she grew sad and ill. A little while later, she called her husband and said to him, weeping, "If I die, bury me under the juniper tree." Then she felt comforted and happy again, and before another month had passed, she had a little child. And when she saw that, it was as white as snow and as red as blood. Her joy was so great that she died. Her husband buried her under the juniper tree and wept bitterly for her. By degrees, however, his sorrow grew less, and although at times he still grieved over his loss, he was able to go about as usual. And later on he married again. He now had a little daughter born to him. The child of his first wife was a boy who was as red as blood and as white as snow. The mother loved her daughter very much, and when she looked at her and then looked at the boy, it pierced her heart to think that he would always stand in the way of her own child, and she was continually thinking how she could get the whole of the property for her. This evil thought took possession of her more and more, and made her behave very unkindly to the boy. She drove him from place to place with cuffings and buffetings, so that the poor child went about in fear and had no peace from the time he left school to the time he went back. One day the little daughter came running to her mother in the storeroom and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yet, my child," said the wife, and she gave her a beautiful apple out of the chest. The chest had a very heavy lid and a large iron lock. "Mother," said the little daughter again, "may our brother have one too?" The mother was angry at this, but she answered, "Yes, when he comes out of school." Just then she looked out of the window and saw him coming, and it seemed as if an evil spirit entered into her, for she snatched the apple out of her little daughter's hand and said, "You shall not have one before your brother." She threw the apple into the chest and shut it to. The little boy now came in, and the evil spirit in the wife made her say kindly to him, "My son, will you have an apple?" But she gave him a wicked look. "Mother," said the boy, "how dreadful you look." "Yes, give me an apple." Thought came to her that she would kill him. "Come with me," she said, and she lifted up the lid of the chest. "Take one out for yourself." And as he bent over to do so, the evil spirit urged her, and crash! Down went the lid, and off went the little boy's head. Then she was overwhelmed with fear at the thought of what she had done. "If only I can prevent anyone knowing that I did it," she thought. So she went upstairs to her room and took a white handkerchief out of her top drawer Then she set the boy's head again on his shoulders and bound it with the handkerchief so that nothing could be seen, and placed him on a chair by the door with an apple in his hand. Soon after this, little Marlene came up to her mother, who was stirring a pot of boiling water over the fire, and said, "Mother?" Brother's sitting by the door with an apple in his hand, and he looked so pale. And when I asked him to give me the apple, he did not answer, and that frightened me. "Go to him again," said her mother, "and if he does not answer, give him a box on the ear." So little Marlene went and said, "Brother, give me that apple." But he did not say a word. Then she gave him a box on the ear, and his head rolled off. She was so terrified at this that she ran crying and screaming to her mother. "Oh!" she said, "I have knocked off Brother's head." And then she wept, and nothing would stop her. "What have you done?" said her mother. "But no one must know about it, so you must keep silence. What is done can't be undone. We will make him into puddings." And she took the little boy and cut him up, made him into puddings, and put him in the pot. But Marlene stood looking on, and wept, and her tears fell into the pot, so that there was no need of salt. Presently the father came home and sat down to his dinner. He asked, "Where is my son?" The mother said nothing, but gave him a large dish of black pudding, and Marlene still wept without ceasing. The father again asked, "Where is my son?" "Oh," answered the wife, "he is gone into the country to his mother's great uncle. He is going to stay there some time. What has he gone there for? And he never even said goodbye to me. Well, he likes being there, and he told me he should be away quite sick. He is well looked after there. I feel very unhappy about it," said the husband, "in case it should not be all right, and he ought to have said goodbye to me." With this he went on with his dinner, and said, "Little Marlene, why do you weep? Brother will soon be back." Then he asked his wife for more pudding, and as he ate, he threw the bones under the table. Little Marlene went upstairs and took her best silk handkerchief out of her bottom drawer, and in it she wrapped all the bones from under the table and carried them outside. And all the time she did nothing but weep. Then she laid them in the green grass under the juniper tree, and she had no sooner done so than all her sadness seemed to leave her, and she wept no more. And now the juniper tree began to move, and the branches waved backwards and forwards, first away from one another, and then together again, as it might be someone clapping their hands for joy. After this a mist came round the tree, and in the midst of it there was a burning as of fire, and out of the fire there flew a beautiful bird that rose high into the air, singing magnificently. And when it could no more be seen, the juniper tree stood there as before, and the silk handkerchief and the bones were gone. Little Marlene now felt as light-hearted and happy as if her brother were still alive, and she went back to the house and sat down cheerfully to the table and ate. The bird flew away and alighted on the house of a goldsmith and began to sing, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all." She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kiewit. Kiewit, the goldsmith, was in his workshop making a gold chain when he heard the song of the bird on his roof. He thought it so beautiful that he got up and ran out, and as he crossed the threshold he lost one of his slippers. But he ran on into the middle of the street with a slipper on one foot and a sock on the other. He still had on his apron and still held the gold chain and the pincers in his hands. And so he stood gazing up at the bird while the sun came shining brightly down on this street. "Bird," he said, "how beautifully you sing. Sing me that song again." "Nay," said the bird, "I do not sing twice for nothing. Give that gold chain, and I will sing it to you again." "Here is the chain. Take it," said the goldsmith. "Only sing me that again." The bear flew down and took the gold chain in his right claw, and then he alighted again in front of the goldsmith and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree." Kiewit. "Kiewit, what a beautiful bird am I!" Then he flew away and settled on the roof of a shoemaker's house and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree." Kiewit. Kiewit, what a beautiful bird am I! The shoemaker heard him, and he jumped up and ran out in his shirt sleeves, and stood looking up at the bird on the roof with his hand over his eyes to keep himself from being blinded by the sun. "Bird," he said, "how beautifully you sing." Then he called through the door to his wife, "Wife, come out. Here is a bird. Come and look at it and hear how beautifully it sings." Then he called his daughter and the children, then the apprentices, girls and boys, and they all ran up the street to look at the bird and saw how splendid it was with its red and green feathers, and its neck like burnished gold, and eyes like two bright stars in its head. "Bird," said the shoemaker, "sing me that song again." Answered the bird, "I do not sing twice. For nothing. You must give me something." "Wife," said the man, "go into the garret. On the upper shelf you will see a pair of red shoes. Bring them to me." The wife went in and fetched the shoes. "There, bird," said the shoemaker, "now sing me that song again." The bird flew down and took the red shoes in his left claw, and then he went back to the roof and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kaiwit, Kaiwit, what a beautiful bird am I! When he had finished, he flew away. He had the chain in his right claw and the shoes in his left. And he flew right away to a mill, and the mill went click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. Inside the mill were 20 of the miller's men hewing a stone, and as they went hick-hack, 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 the mill went click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. The bird settled on a lime tree in front of the mill and sang, "My mother killed her little son." Then one of the men left off, "My father grieved when I was gone." 2 more men left off and listened, "My sister loved me best of all." Then 4 more left off. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lend. Now there were only 8 at work underneath, and now only 5. The juniper dash tree. Dot, and now only 1. Kaiwit, Kaiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. Ben. He looked up and the last one had left off work. "Bird," he said, "what a beautiful song that is you sing. Let me hear it too." "Sing it again, eh?" answered the bird. "I do not sing twice for nothing. Give me that millstone, and I will sing it again, if it belonged to me alone," said the man. "You should have it." "Yes, yes," said the others. "If he will sing again, he can have it." The bird came down, and all the 20 millers set to and lifted up the stone with a beam. Then the bird put his head through the hole and took the stone round his neck like a collar, and flew back with it to the tree and sang, "My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all." She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kaiwit, Kaiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. And when he had finished his song, he spread his wings, and with the chain in his right claw, the shoes in his left, and the millstone round his neck, he flew right away to his father's house. The father, the mother, and little Marlene were having their dinner. "How light-hearted I feel," said the father, "so pleased and cheerful." "And I," said the mother, "I feel so uneasy, as if a heavy thunderstorm were coming." But little Marlene sat and wept and wept. Then the bird came flying towards the house and settled on the roof. "I do feel so happy," said the father, "and how beautifully the sun shines. I feel just as if I were going to see an old friend again," said the wife, "and I am so full of distress and uneasiness that my teeth chatter, and I feel as if there were a fire in my veins." And she tore open her dress and all. The while little Marlene sat in the corner and wept, and the plate on her knees was wet with her tears. The bird now flew to the juniper tree and began singing, "My mother killed her little son." The mother shut her eyes and her ears, that she might see and hear nothing. But there was a roaring sound in her ears like that of a violent storm, and in her eyes a burning and flashing like lightning. "My father grieved when I was gone." "Look, mother," said the man, "at the beautiful bird that is singing so magnificently, and how warm and bright the sun is, and what a delicious scent of spice in the air. My sister loved me best of all." Then little Marlene laid her head down on her knees and sobbed. "I must go outside and see the bird nearer," said the man. "Ah, do not go," cried the wife. "I feel as if the whole house were in flames." But the man went out and looked at the bird. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Kaiwit, Kaiwit, what a beautiful bird am I. With that, the bird let fall the gold chain, and it fell just round the man's neck so that it fitted him exactly. He went inside and said, "See, what a splendid bird that is. He has given me this beautiful gold chain and looks so beautiful himself." But the wife was in such fear and trouble that she fell on the floor, and her cap fell from her head. Then the bird began again. "My mother killed her little son." "Ah me," cried the wife, "if I were but 1,000 feet beneath the earth, that I might not hear that song." My father grieved when I was gone. Then the woman fell down again as if dead. My sister loved me best of all. "Well," said Little, "Marlene, I will go out too and see if the bird will give me anything." So she went out. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might liend. He threw down the shoes to her underneath the juniper tree. "Kawit, Kawit, what a beautiful bird am I." And she now felt quite happy and light-hearted. She put on the shoes and danced and jumped about in them. "I was so miserable," she said, "when I came out, but that has all passed away. That is indeed a splendid bird, and he has given me a pair of red shoes." The wife sprang up, with her hair standing out from her head like flames of fire. "Then I will go out too," she said, "and see if it will lighten my misery, for I feel as if the world were coming to an end." But as she crossed the threshold, crash, the bird threw the millstone down on her head, and she was crushed to death. But they only saw mist and flame and fire rising from the spot, and when these had passed, there stood the little brother. And he took the father and little Marlene by the hand. Then they all three rejoiced, and went inside together, and sat down to their dinners, and ate. The two are up either, were two brothers who were both soldiers. The one was rich, and the other poor. The poor man thought he would try to better himself. So, pulling off his red coat, he became a gardener and dug his ground well and sowed turnips. When the seed came up, there was one plant bigger than all the rest, and it kept getting larger and larger, and seemed as if it would never cease growing, so that it might have been called the Prince of Turnips. for there never was such a one seen before, and never will again. At last it was so big that it filled a cart, and 2 oxen could hardly draw it. And the gardener knew not what in the world to do with it, nor whether it would be a blessing or a curse to him. One day he said to himself, "What shall I do with it? If I sell it, it will bring no more than another, and for eating, the little turnips are better than this. The best thing, perhaps, is to carry it and give it to the king as a mark of respect." Then he yoked his oxen and drew the turnip to the court and gave it to the king. "What a wonderful thing," said the king. "I have seen many strange things, but such a monster as this I never saw. Where did you get the seed? Or is it only your good luck? If so, you are a true child of fortune." "Ah, no," answered the gardener. "I am no child of fortune. I am a poor soldier who never could get enough to live upon. So I laid aside my red coat and set to work tilling the ground. I have a brother who is rich, and your majesty knows him well, and all the world knows him. But because I am poor, everybody forgets me." The king then took pity on him and said, "You shall be poor no longer. I will give you so much that you shall be even richer than your brother." Then he gave him gold and lands and flocks, and made him so rich that his brother's fortune could not at all be compared with his. When the brother heard of all this, and how a turnip had made the gardener so rich, he envied him sorely, and bethought himself how he could contrive to get the same good fortune for himself. However, he determined to manage more cleverly than his brother, and got together a present of gold and fine horses for the king, and thought he must have a much larger gift in return. For if his brother had received so much for only a turnip, what must his present be worth? The king took the gift very graciously, and said he knew not what to give in return more valuable and wonderful than the great turnip. So the soldier was forced to put it into a cart and drag it home with him. When he reached home, he knew not upon whom to vent his rage and spite, and at length wicked thoughts came into his head, and he resolved to kill his brother. So he hired some villains to murder him, and having shown them where to lie in ambush, he went to his brother and said, "Dear brother, I have found a hidden treasure. Let us go and dig it up and share it between us." The other had no suspicions of his roguery, so they went out together, and as they were traveling along, the murderers rushed out upon him, bound him, and were going to hang him on a tree. But whilst they were getting all ready, they heard the trampling of a horse at a distance, which so frightened them that they pushed their prisoner neck and shoulders together into a sack, and swung him up by a cord to the tree, where they left him dangling and ran away. Meantime he worked and worked away, till he made a hole large enough to put out his head. When the horseman came up, he proved to be a student, a merry fellow, who was journeying along on his nag, and singing as he went. As soon as the man in the sack saw him passing under the tree, he cried out, "Good morning! Good morning to thee, my friend." The student looked about everywhere, and seeing no one, and not knowing where the voice came from, cried out, "Who calls me?" Then the man in the tree answered, "Lift up thine eyes, for behold, here I sit in the sack of wisdom. Here have I, in a short time, learned great and wondrous things. Compared to this seat, all the learning of the schools is as empty air a little longer. And I shall know all that man can know, and shall come forth wiser than the wisest of mankind. Here I discern the signs and motions of the heavens and the stars, the laws that control the winds, the number of the sands on the seashore, the healing of the sick, the virtues of all simples of birds, and of precious stones. Wert thou but once here, my friend, thou wouldst feel and own the power of knowledge." The student listened to all this and wondered much. At last he said, "Blessed be the day and hour when I found you. Cannot you contrive to let me into the sack for a little while?" Then the other answered, as if very unwillingly, "A little space I may allow thee to sit here, if thou wilt reward me well and entreat me kindly. But thou must tarry yet an hour below, till I have learned some little matters that are yet unknown to me." So the student sat himself down and waited a while, but the time hung heavy upon him, and he begged earnestly that he might ascend forthwith, for his thirst for knowledge was great. Then the other pretended to give way, and said, "Thou must let the sack of wisdom descend by untying yonder cord, and then thou shalt enter." So the student let him down, opened the sack, and set him. "Hurry! Now then," cried he, "let me ascend quickly." As he began to put himself into the sack heels first, "Wait a while," said the gardener. "That is not the way." Then he pushed him in head first, tied up the sack, and soon swung up the searcher, after wisdom dangling in the air. "How is it with thee, friend?" said he. "Dost thou not feel that wisdom comes unto thee? Rest there in peace, till thou art a wiser man than thou wert." So saying, he trotted off on the student's nag, and left the poor fellow to gather wisdom till somebody should come and let him down. "Clever Etcha Ennis, the mother of Hans, said, 'Whither away?' Hans answered, 'To Gretel.' 'Behave well, Hans.' 'Oh, I'll behave well. Goodbye, mother.' 'Goodbye, Hans.' Hans comes to Gretel. 'Good day, Gretel.' 'Good day. Hans, what do you bring? That is good.' 'I bring nothing. I want to have something given me.' Gretel presents Hans with a needle. Hans says, 'Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans.' Hans takes the needle, sticks it into a hay cart, and follows the cart home. 'Good evening, mother.' 'Good evening, Hans. Where have you been?' with Gretel. What did you take her? Took nothing, had something given me. What did Gretel give you? Gave me a needle. Where is the needle? Hans. Stuck in the hay cart. That was ill done. Hans, you should have stuck the needle in your sleeve. Never mind. I'll do better next time. Whither away? Hans, to Gretel, mother. Behave well, Hans. Oh, I'll behave well. Goodbye, mother. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good day, Gretel. Good day, Hans. What do you bring that is good? I bring nothing. I want to have something given to me. Gretel presents Hans with a knife. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the knife, sticks it in his sleeve, and goes home. Good evening, Mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? With Gretel. What did you take her? Took her nothing. She gave me something. What did Gretel give you? Gave me a knife. Where is the knife, Hans? Stuck in my sleeve. That's ill done, Hans. You should have put the knife in your pocket. Never mind, we'll do better. Next time. Whither away? Hans, to Gretel, mother. Behave well, Hans. Oh, I'll behave well. Goodbye, mother. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good day, Gretel. Good day, Hans. What good thing do you bring? I bring nothing, Want something given me. Gretel presents Hans with a young goat. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the goat, ties its legs, and puts it in his pocket. When he gets home, it is suffocated. Good evening, Mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? With Gretel. What did you take her? Took nothing. She gave me something. What did Gretel give you? She gave me a goat. Where is the goat, Hans? Put it in my pocket. That was ill done. Hans, you should have put a rope round the goat's neck. Never mind. We'll do better next time. Whither away, Hans? To Gretel, mother. Behave well, Hans. Behave well. Goodbye, mother. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good day, Gretel. Good day, Hans. What good thing do you bring? I bring nothing. I want something given me. Gretel presents Hans with a piece of bacon. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye, Hans. Hans takes the bacon, ties it to a rope, and drags it away behind him. The dogs come and devour the bacon. When he gets home, he has the rope in his hand, and there is no longer anything hanging on to it. Good evening, Mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? With Gretel. What did you take her? I took her nothing. She gave me something. What did Gretel give you? gave me a bit of bacon. Where is the bacon, Hans? I tied it to a rope, brought it home. Dogs took it. That was ill done. Hans, you should have carried the bacon on your head. Never mind. We'll do better next time. Whither away, Hans? To Gretel, mother. Behave well, Hansa. I'll behave well. Goodbye, mother. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good day, Gretel. Good day, Hans. What good thing do you bring? I bring nothing but wood. Have something given. Gretel presents Hans with a calf. Goodbye, Gretel. Goodbye. Hans takes the calf, puts it on his head, and the calf kicks his face. Good evening, mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? With Gretel. What did you take her? I took nothing, but had something given me. What did Gretel give you? A calf. Where have you? The calf, Hans. I set it on my head, and it kicked my face. That was ill done, Hans. You should have led the calf and put it in the stall. Never mind. We'll do better next time. Whither away, Hans? To Gretel, mother. Behave well, Hans. I'll behave well. Goodbye, mother. Goodbye, Hans. Hans comes to Gretel. Good day, Gretel. Good day, Hans. What good thing do you bring? I bring nothing but wood. Have something given. Gretel says to Hans, I will go with you. Hans takes Gretel, ties her to a rope, leads her to the rack, and binds her fast. Then Hans goes to his mother. Good evening, mother. Good evening, Hans. Where have you been? With Gretel. What did you take her? I took her nothing. What did Gretel give you? She gave me nothing. She came with me. Where have you left Gretel? I led her by the rope, tied her to the rack, and scattered some grass for her. That was ill done. Hans, you should have cast friendly eyes on her. Never mind. We'll do better. Hans went into the stable, cut out all the calves and sheep's eyes, and threw them in Gretel's face. Then Gretel became angry, tore herself loose and ran away, and was no longer the bride of Hans. The 3 son-aged count once lived in Switzerland, who had an only son, but he was stupid and could learn nothing. Then said the father, Hark you, my son. Try as I will, I can get nothing into your head. You must go from hence. I will give you into the care of a celebrated master, who shall see what he can do with you. The youth was sent into a strange town, and remained a whole year with the master. At the end of this time, he came home again, and his father asked, Now, my son, what have you learned? Father, I have learnt what the dogs say when they bark. Lord, have mercy on us, cried the father. Is that all you have learnt? I will send you into another town, to another master. The youth was taken there and stayed a year with this Master likewise. When he came back, the father again asked, "My son, what have you learned?" He answered, "Father, I have learnt what the birds say." Then the father fell into a rage and said, "Oh, you lost man, you have spent the precious time and learnt nothing. Are you not ashamed to appear before my eyes? I will send you to a third master. But if you learn nothing this time also, I will no longer be your father." The youth remained a whole year with the third master also, and when he came home again, and his father inquired, "My son, what have you learned?" he answered, "Dear father, I have this year learnt what the frogs croak." Then the father fell into the most furious anger, sprang up, called his people thither, and said, "This man is no longer my son. I drive him forth and command you to take him out into the forest and kill him." They took him forth, but when they should have killed him, they could not do it for pity, and let him go. And they cut the eyes and tongue out of a deer that they might carry them to the old man as a token. The youth wandered on, and after some time came to a fortress where he begged for a night's lodging. "Yes," said the lord of the castle, "if you will pass the night down there in the old tower, go thither. But I warn you, it is at the peril of your life, for it is full of wild dogs, which bark and howl without stopping, and it's certain hours a man has to be given to them, whom they at once devour." The whole district was in sorrow and dismay because of them, and yet no one could do anything to stop this. The youth, however, was without fear, and said, "Just let me go down to the barking dogs and give me something that I can throw to them. They will do nothing to harm me." As he himself would have it so, they gave him some food for the wild animals, and led him down to the tower. When he went inside, the dogs did not bark at him, but wagged their tails quite amicably around him, ate what he set before them, and did not hurt one hair of his head. Next morning, to the astonishment of everyone, he came out again, safe and unharmed, and said to the lord of the castle, "The dogs have revealed to me, in their own language, why they dwell there, and bring evil on the land. They are bewitched, and are obliged to watch over a great treasure which is below in the tower, and they can have no rest until it is taken away. And I have likewise learnt from their discourse how that is to be done." Then all who heard this rejoiced, and the lord of the castle said he would adopt him as a son if he accomplished it successfully. He went down again, and as he knew what he had to do, he did it thoroughly, and brought a chest full of gold out with him. The howling of the wild dogs was henceforth heard no more. They had disappeared, and the country was freed from the trouble. After some time he took it in his head that he would travel to Rome. On the way he passed by a marsh in which a number of frogs were sitting croaking. He listened to them, and when he became aware of what they were saying, he grew very thoughtful and sad. At last he arrived in Rome, where the Pope had just died. and there was great doubt among the cardinals as to whom they should appoint as his successor. They at length agreed that the person should be chosen as Pope, who should be distinguished by some divine and miraculous token. And just as that was decided on, the young count entered into the church, and suddenly 2 snow-white doves flew on his shoulders and remained sitting there. The ecclesiastics recognized therein the token from above, and asked him on the spot if he would be pope. He was undecided, and knew not if he were worthy of this. But the doves counseled him to do it, and at length he said, "Yes." Then was he anointed and consecrated, and thus was fulfilled what he had heard from the frogs on his way, which had so affected him that he was to be His Holiness the Pope. Then he had to sing a mass, and did not know 1 word of it. But the 2 doves sat continually on his shoulders, and said it all in his ear. The fox and the ceatite happened that the cat met the fox in a forest, and as she thought to herself, "He is clever and full of experience, and much esteemed in the world," she spoke to him in a friendly way. "Good day, dear Mr. Fox. How are you? How is all with you? How are you getting on in these hard times?" The fox, full of all kinds of arrogance, looked at the cat from head to foot, and for a long time did not know whether he would give any answer or not. At last he said, "Ooh, you wretched beard cleaner, you piebald fool, you hungry mouse hunter, what can you be thinking of? Have you the cheek to ask how I am getting on? What have you learned? How many arts do you understand?" "I understand but 1, replied the cat, modestly. "What art is that?" asked the fox. "When the hounds are following me, I can spring into a tree and save myself." "Is that all?" said the fox. "I am master of 100 arts, and haven't the barging a sackful of cunning. You make me sorry for you. Come with me, I will teach you how people get away from the hounds." Just then came a hunter with 4 dogs. The cat sprang nimbly up a tree, and sat down at the top of it, where the branches and foliage quite concealed her. "Open your sack, Mr. Fox, open your sack," cried the cat to him. But the dogs had already seized him, and were holding him fast. "Ah, Mr. Fox," cried the cat, "you with your 100 arts are left in the lurch. Had you been able to climb like me, you would not have lost your life." "The 4 clever brothers, dear children," said a poor man to his 4 sons, "I have nothing to give you. You must go out into the wide world and try your luck. Begin by learning some craft or another, and see how you can get on." 4 brothers took their walking sticks in their hands, and their little bundles on their shoulders, and after bidding their father goodbye, went all out at the gate together. When they had got on some way, they came to 4 crossways, each leading to a different country. Then the eldest said, "Here we must part. But this day for years we will come back to this spot, and in the meantime each must try what he can do for himself." So each brother went his way, and as the eldest was hastening on, a man met him and asked him where he was going and what he wanted. "I am going to try my luck in the world, and should like to begin by learning some art or trade," answered he. "Then," said the man, "go with me, and I will teach you to become the cunningest thief that ever was." "No," said the other, "that is not an honest calling, and what can one look to earn by it in the end but the gallows?" "Oh," said the man, "you need not fear the gallows, for I will only teach you to steal what will be fair game. I meddle with nothing but what no one else can get or care anything about, and where no one can find you out." So the young man agreed to follow his trade, and he soon showed himself so clever that nothing could escape him that he had once set his mind upon. The second brother also met a man who, when he found out what he was setting out upon, asked him what craft he meant to follow. "I do not know yet," said he. "Then come with me and be us. It is a noble art, for nothing can be hidden from you. When once you understand the stars." The plan pleased him much, and he soon became such a skillful stargazer that when he had served out his time and wanted to leave his master, he gave him a glass and said, "With this you can see all that is passing in the sky and on earth, and nothing can be hidden from you." The third brother met a huntsman who took him with him and taught him so well all that belonged to hunting that he became very clever in the craft of the woods, and when he left his master he gave him a bow and said, "Whatever you shoot at with this bow, you will be sure to hit the youngest brother likewise." Met a man who asked him what he wished to do. "Would not you like," said he, "to be a tailor?" "Oh, no," said the young man. "Sitting cross-legged from morning to night, working backwards and forwards with a needle and goose, will never suit me." Answered the man, "That is not my sort of tailoring. Come with me, and you will learn quite another kind of craft from that." Not knowing what better to do, he came into the plan and learned tailoring from the beginning. And when he left his master, he gave him a needle and said, "You can sew anything with this, be it as soft as an egg or as hard as steel, and the joint will be so fine that no seam will be seen." After the space of 4 years, at the time agreed upon, the 4 brothers met at the 4 crossroads, and having welcomed each other, set off towards their father's home, where they told him all that had happened to them, and how each had learned some craft. Then, one day, as they were sitting before the house under a very high tree, the father said, "I should like to try what each of you can do in this way." So he looked up and said to the second son, "At the top of this tree there is a chaffinch's nest. Tell me how many eggs there are in it." The stargazer took his glass, looked up, and said, "5. "Now," said the father to the eldest son, Take away the eggs without letting the bird that is sitting upon them and hatching them know anything of what you are doing." So the cunning thief climbed up the tree and brought away to his father the 5 eggs from under the bird, and it never saw or felt what he was doing, but kept sitting on at its ease. Then the father took the eggs and put 1 on each corner of the table and the 5th in the middle, and said to the huntsman, "Cut all the eggs in 2 pieces at one shot." The huntsman took up his bow, and at one shot struck all the 5 eggs as his father wished. "Now comes your turn," said he to the young tailor. "Sew the eggs and the young birds in them together again, so neatly that the shot shall have done them no harm." Then the tailor took his needle and sewed the eggs as he was told, and when he had done, the thief was sent to take them back to the nest and put them under the bird without its knowing it. Then she went on sitting and hatched them, and in a few days they crawled out and had only a little red streak across their necks, where the tailor had sewn them together. "Well done, sons," said the old man. "You have made good use of your time and learnt something worth the knowing, but I am sure I do not know which ought to have the prize. Oh, that a time might soon come for you to turn your skill to some account." Not long after this there was a great bustle in the country, for the king's daughter had been carried off by a mighty dragon, and the king mourned over his loss day and night, and made it known that whoever brought her back to him should have her for a wife. Then the 4 brothers said to each other, "Here is a chance for us. Let us try what we can do." And they agreed to see whether they could not set the princess free. "I will soon find out where she is. However," said the stargazer, as he looked through his glass, and he soon cried out, "I see her afar off, sitting upon a rock in the sea, and I can spy the dragon close by, guarding her." Then he went to the king and asked for a ship for himself and his brothers, and they sailed together over the sea till they came to the right place. There they found the princess sitting, as the stargazer had said, on the rock, and the dragon was lying asleep with his head upon her lap. "I dare not shoot at him," said the huntsman, "for I should kill the beautiful young lady also. Then I will try my skill," said the thief, and went and stole her away from under the dragon, so quietly and gently that the beast did not know it, but went on snoring. Then away they hastened with her full of joy in their boat towards the ship, but soon came the dragon roaring behind them through the air, for he awoke and missed the princess. But when he got over the boat and wanted to pounce upon them and carry off the princess, the huntsman took up his bow and shot him straight through the heart, so that he fell down dead. They were still not safe, for he was such a great beast that in his fall he overset the boat, and they had to swim in the open sea upon a few planks. So the tailor took his needle and with a few large stitches, put some of the planks together, and he sat down upon these, and sailed about and gathered up all pieces of the boat, and then tacked them together so quickly that the boat was soon ready, and they then reached the ship and got home safe. When they had brought home the princess to her father, there was great rejoicing, and he said to the 4 brothers, "One of you shall marry her, but you must settle amongst yourselves which it is to be." Then there arose a quarrel between them, and the stargazer said, "If I had not found the princess out, all your skill would have been of no use. Therefore she ought to be mine." "Your seeing her would have been of no use," said the thief, "if I had not taken her away from the dragon. Therefore she ought to be mine." "No, she is mine," said the huntsman, "for if I had not killed the dragon, he would, after all, have torn you and the princess into pieces. And if I had not sewn the boat together again," said the tailor, "you would all have been drowned. Therefore she is mine." Then the king put in a word and said, "Each of you is right, and as all cannot have the young lady, the best way is for neither of you to have her. For the truth is, there is somebody she likes a great deal better. But to make up for your loss, I will give each of you, as a reward for his skill, half a kingdom." So the brothers agreed that this plan would be much better than either quarreling or marrying a lady who had no mind to have them, and the king then gave to each half a kingdom, as he had said, and they lived very happily the rest of their days, and took good care of their father. And somebody took better care of the young lady than to let either the dragon or one of the craftsmen have her again.